All right, we're going to take a look at this Pendulums Lab sheet, and I'm going to help you fill it out. Now, we'll do this in class, but if you missed class or if you want to do this ahead of time and get this done so you don't have to do it in class, that's what this video is for. All right, so first off, put your name on this. Now, you guys will have a paper copy that you write on with pencil, but I'll just type it here. It makes it easier for me. Now state the problem. Actually, it's going to be a question, not a statement. And for this lab, we'll be changing the mass at the end of the pendulum. So our question will be, how will changing the mass affect the number of swings a pendulum makes in 15 seconds? Question mark. Most common mistake that kids make at this point is they forget to put that little question mark there. Change this font. How will changing the mass affect the number of swings a pendulum makes in 15 seconds? It's really important you write it that way. And I guess we'll talk about the dependent variable and the independent variable. But the independent variable here is changing the mass. And so we include that in the question. And the dependent variable is the number of swings the pendulum makes in 15 seconds. So we included both the independent and the dependent variable in our question. Really important. All right, up next we've got gather information. So this is just some background information you get from when you practice with the pendulum, the 38 centimeter pendulum. So let's make some, we'll write down some observations that we made while practicing with the 38 centimeter pendulum. So for example, quantitative observations, that it was a 38 centimeter pendulum, and it made, I think it was about 14 swings in 15 seconds. So there's quantitative information, 38 centimeters, 14 swings, 15 seconds. Another one is that, another quantitative is that we timed for 15 seconds. I guess we already said that, but oh well. Oh, another one is that there was 1 penny on the pendulum, because that's important too. And then some qualitative observations, for example, maybe the penny fell off would be a qualitative observation, or I guess you could say maybe like the pendulum hit the table leg. That would be qualitative observation. All right, up next we've got our hypothesis. Remember, the hypothesis is always written as an if, then, because statement. So if is our independent, this is where we write our independent variable. So we'll write if we change the mass. That's what we're changing. That's our independent variable. We change the mass. Now then is our prediction. So this is where we make a prediction about what's going to happen with the dependent variable. So the dependent variable was the number of swings. That's what we're trying to change. And let's make a prediction. Then the pendulum will swing, I'm going to predict it's going to swing more times. Now, don't just write, I mean, decide for yourself. Do you think it's going to swing more times? Do you think it's going to swing less times? Or it could swing the same amount of times. It could still get 14 swings. So make your own prediction. I'm just writing that so that you can see an example. And I'll say the reason because, so this is my inference, because it has more momentum, more mass, and more momentum. Okay, so if we change the mass, then the pendulum will swing more times because it has more mass and more momentum. Okay, so that's my my hypothesis, if then because. And again, if is the independent variable that we're changing. Then is my prediction about the dependent variable. And the because is an inference or an explanation about why that's going to change. Okay. All right, materials for this lab. Just a couple here. We'll list pendulum, extra pennies, meter stick to measure and to hang the pendulum from, and a stopwatch to time. So those are the materials we'll need for this lab, not too many. Okay, our independent variable. Really important that we're paying attention to what our independent variable is. And I've said it a couple times. Our independent variable will be the mass. The mass of the pendulum. And remember, I've said that, well, I'll come back to that in a second. All right, now our dependent variable, I've said this a couple times too. Dependent variable is the number of swings. So we're hoping if we change the mass, the number of swings will change as a result. Now, I want to point out that we've got our independent and dependent variable here. We've got our independent and dependent variable up here. And we've got our independent and dependent variable here in the hypothesis. So a big part of any lab is paying attention to what's your independent variable and your dependent variable and keeping those in focus. All right, now controlled variables. So these are the variables that we don't change. These are the things that we want to make sure that don't change at all, because if they changed, it might affect our number of swings. So, for example, we're not going to give it a push, so no push. Another example is that we're still going to use the 38 centimeter pendulums. We're not going to change the length of the pendulum. Another thing we won't change, another thing we will control, is that it's a 15-second time limit. And finally, another thing we won't change is that we count one swing as there and back. That equals one swing. All right, now if you're filling out your lab sheet, you'll probably have to start and stop and pause to get all the information here. But make sure you get it all, and then you'll be off to a good start. We'll do step 5 in class.